All right. It looks like it's 11:30, right? All right. Well, let's get going. So good morning, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Anastasia Chapek. I am the Vice President of Sales for New Resources Consulting. And first, I would like to thank everyone for spending the afternoon with us. Thank you very much for being here. Second, I would like to thank our panelists. We have a fantastic group of the CIOs joining us today who are going to talk about how their organizations are dealing with the crisis, how this pandemic is affecting their business, and more importantly, how the organizations had to redefine themselves in a very short period of time, not only to support, but keep their organizations functioning. So those of you who are familiar with New Resources Consulting know that we have been conducting these executive briefings on a regular basis. So we usually do this quarterly. The last one we had was back in February. And normally these are face-to-face types of events. So this is the first virtual type of executive briefing that we're having. So we're thrilled to have everybody together. We're very thankful to our panel to be sharing their thoughts and perspectives with us today. So we're going to talk a little bit about the past and what IT organizations had to do to react quickly to the changing environment. We're going to talk a little bit about the present and how things are going now that we're operating in somewhat of a virtual world. And then we're also going to talk about the future and how things are going to change after the crisis. So what things are here to stay and how different organizations in different industries are preparing themselves for going back. So in a nutshell, this is the scope of the panel discussion we're going to be having today. So before I let the panelists introduce themselves, I have a couple of logistics that I would like to make sure we share. Please note that everyone except me and the panelists are currently muted. So please do not unmute yourself unless you have a question that you would like to ask. We will have time at the end to ask questions. So you will have an opportunity to ask questions verbally, or you can also submit your questions via chat. So we will be monitoring the chat throughout the panel discussion, and we will make sure that we will try to address as many questions as possible at the end of the conversation. So with that, let's go to the panel and do the introductions. So what I would ask the panelists to do is, if you can please state your name, if you state the company that you're with and your role within the organization. So if you can give us just a little bit of a context to the size of the IT organization that you're managing, as well as the number of direct reports that you have. And then if you can also state, give us the size of your overall organization and how many locations your IT organization supports, as well as give us just a very brief 30-second overview of the state of your industry. So how this crisis situation, the pandemic, is impacting your industry that your organization belongs to. So with that, Mark, can we start with you?
Sure, be happy to. Hello, everyone. This is Mark Molitor, CIO with Milwaukee Tool. Been with Milwaukee Tool for about 2.5 years. Our IT organization is roughly a little over 100 employees, and I have 5 direct reports. Our IT resources are primarily located in 2 locations, Milwaukee and Mississippi. Mississippi is where we have both our large distribution center and some manufacturing facilities. In terms of the company itself, we are in excess of $4 billion of revenue this year. If you don't know much about us, we basically deliver power tools, or we think of ourselves as a solution provider to all of your professional trades, both on and off of the job site. We are global, so we have a global manufacturing footprint, as well as we sell globally, although the vast majority of our revenue is in North America. In terms of the pandemic itself, it's kind of interesting. I'd say it first started or impacted us largely from a supply chain standpoint, starting with what was going on in Asia. And then as the pandemic spread, it became much more of an impact to our end users and our customers, started affecting job sites, things of that nature. We sell basically through distributors or major, like a Home Depot or some of your major hardware types of stores. So depending on the state that you're in, major job sites were shut down in places like New York and Massachusetts, and other states not so much. So we've seen varying degrees based on state and how the pandemic has been spreading. Major impacts, obviously, in some of the European countries as well. And as it spread, it also started to impact our own operations in terms of how we planned and prepared for that as well. So it's kind of been an evolution as the pandemic spread.
Thank you, Mark. Anthony, over to you.
All right, hey everyone. Antony D'Cruz. I'm the Senior Vice President for IT and PMO at HSA Bank. So my IT team is about 50 people, and then in addition, I have kind of varying right now about 10 to 12 contract staff as well. So about 60 odd is my IT team with about I do have 4 direct reports. HSA Bank, we're primarily located in Milwaukee with an office up in Sheboygan as well. And then we do have a couple of call center locations, one out in Connecticut and then an outsourced call center location in Fargo. In total, HSA Bank is about 700 employees, mostly in those locations. And then we have sales and account management teams that are all over the country working remotely. So far, impact of the pandemic on our business, the immediate impact has been pretty minimal. We are in the business of providing accounts that are linked with typically your health benefits. So a health savings account, flexible spending account, those kind of what is generally called consumer-directed healthcare accounts. So we haven't really seen much of an impact. Our business, we do not have a branch network like other banks. So we've always been just online and contact center as a way of interacting with our customers. So really have not had any impact to those operations from the pandemic. But obviously, as the economic impact of this continues to spread, we'll likely see some longer term impacts to the banking industry as a whole.
Okay, thank you, Anthony. Laurie?
Good morning, everyone. I am Laurie Panella. I am the CIO with Marquette, obviously with Marquette University. Good morning. I have an IT group of about 80, a little over 80 employees, and I supplement that with students. So I have about 20 to 30 students on a given year. We support both the business of Marquette University as well as academia. We have about 25, actually a little more than that, but I believe it's about 2,900 employees and 11,500 plus students. I have 4 direct reports. Our organization right now, or I should say our industry, we have moved, much like all other higher ed, we have moved all of our students and faculty to online learning. And we anticipate that we will continue with online learning for the remainder of the summer. Many of our peer institutions are looking at options for the fall online. Maybe it is taking a year, or not a year, but a semester off. Some of our peer institutions are looking at that. But Marquette is, we will have face-to-face instruction come this August. Obviously, that all depends on if pandemic and when the pandemic comes back. So it has been a real transition for higher education. We are financially, it has impacted us with our students not being in dorms, some of the events that we hold online or on-prem. So it's been a challenge. But so far, things are pretty much in a steady state, and we're planning for the near term and the short term.
Okay, thank you. And last but not least, Jody.
Hi, I'm Jody McDonough, CIO with Sub-Zero Group, which basically represent 3 luxury brands known as Sub-Zero, Wolf, and Cove. We are a global manufacturer, and we work in a B to B to B to C type of market. So there's quite a chain that we do have to support in that. Very similar to Mark, the markets did slow down, though probably not to the extent right now. A lot of the essential businesses were construction, remodeling, and that, so they did keep going just at a lower volume. So we have continued to ship, though we did shut down our production for a while just for safety reasons. We have halted that, but are looking to reopen that here probably within 2 weeks to get back into business there. From an organization, we do have an IT organization of about 100 people that support 3,000 employees within North America, and then another 500 to 600 globally. And I think that's pretty much, where the business is going for us. We will see a sales decline this year. Our company-owned showrooms that go out and do a lot of the consultations have been shut down now for 5+ weeks, which means we're not working with customers to plan their remodeling projects or their new construction projects or their high-rise condominiums, in the coming years. So probably for us, the worst is still to come from our market impact because those projects are immediately going now, but we will see a slowdown, in 6 to 9 months is probably we'll see the bigger impact to our type of business.
All right. Thank you, Jody, and thank you, everybody on the panel. So let's dive in. We have a number of questions prepared that we will work through for about an hour, and then we will take questions from the audience as well. So the first question is going to be about business continuity planning. Honestly, if anyone told us 12 or even 6 months ago that we would be dealing with this worldwide pandemic, we would have probably not taken them seriously, right? So now that we're in the midst of this, what type of a business continuity plan did you have in place prior to the pandemic? When did you make the decision to activate that plan, and how has it met the demands of the crisis? So what worked well and what needed improvement? So Antony, if we can start with you, please.
Sure, thanks, Liz. So we do have a business continuity plan. I'd say looking back a little bit now, it was not as probably as comprehensive as we needed it to be, and didn't specifically deal with a pandemic situation. Right, the plan that we have, our BCP plan that we had prior to this, I think was more focused on loss of critical systems, loss of a data center, loss of a production or a processing facility. So we did have to kind of refine it, I should say, a little bit, kind of seat of our pants as we went through this. Technically, we never actually invoked our BCP, and I say that specifically because we have some contractual obligations with customers if we officially invoke a BCP. We never actually had to invoke a BCP. We transitioned all of our folks to working remotely. We made that call around middle of March. I want to say the 17th, I think, or that week was when we made the decision that we were going to transition everyone to work remotely. Of the 700 odd people that we have at the bank, we had close to 500 that we needed to set up to be able to work remotely with VPN access and so on. So that was about a 2.5 week effort that my team really kind of scrambled to get everyone set up to work remotely. But yeah, once we were able to do that, I think right now we're at about 98% of our 98% of our team is working remotely. And so far things have been working really well for us. We've not had really to adjust any of our service levels or hours of operation. But yeah, we definitely using this as a learning opportunity to continue to refine and expand our BCP plans.
Okay, thank you. What about Milwaukee Tool? Mark, what have you had to activate and what have you experienced with your business continuity planning?
Yeah, I think a lot of similarities to what Anthony just talked about. So I would say we had kind of your typical disaster recovery type of plan, in place that had been tested and proven, if you will. And in the case of the pandemic, what we did is we really formed a cross-functional team that started to really develop what our plan was for addressing the pandemic. And it really started out first with kind of monitoring what was happening and putting special, I'll call them procedures, operations in place for how can you help mitigate risk, mitigate the possibility of infection, things of that nature. Thinking about limiting travel, all those types of policies before it actually got here, and then starting to prepare for remote work. Very similarly, we made the call on March the 16th to move all of our offices, everyone in the office, to remote. And a key activity we had there was just expanding our VPN for the remote access and connectivity. And we put very special procedures in place to help employees get ready to working from home. So we went out and we bought extra equipment. We set up a special service desk down in our atrium where people could come in and get all their questions answered. We let people take their equipment from the office that wasn't mounted, whatever they needed. Probably, I'd say the single biggest thing that bubbled up, we had a couple of people that had to be quarantined before we moved people to remote. So we used those as input as to, hey, what's working well, what's not working well. And at least in our offices, everyone's used to having dual monitors. So one of the key things that people looked for was, could they get an extra monitor for home? So I think we bought, I don't remember, it was 200 or 500 extra monitors. And at the point we were trying to buy some of this stuff, it was starting to get hard to get all these accessories and things delivered. But we set up a special service desk down in the atrium that people could get the extra equipment, whatever they needed. And we were able to get them working. And that's gone amazing and well. We basically had 1,900 people all working remote on the very first day with really no issues. And to be honest, I expected they would at least find some things that they needed to do that they couldn't do. But for the most part, it's gone really well. And we've kind of been in that mode ever since. Our factories and distribution centers continue to operate. So we've done different things from a procedural standpoint for how to separate people, provide some distancing, things of that nature, to try to keep people healthy and avoid any problems in those facilities.
Okay. Jody, what about you with Sub-Zero? So how did you manage?
It's going to sound like a broken record a little bit from timing here, but we did, I've been with Sub-Zero about 18 months now. So in January, I kind of had to learn what our business continuity plan was, hurry up, get up to speed to see what it was. And as Mark said, it was much more of a disaster recovery plan. So we kicked off in late January then to start formulating what something might look like. By the middle of February, we really started putting things in motion. That's when we started placing orders for equipment, because we had figured that out. We identified all the, the key individuals, because what we did not know is we've never moved all of our staff remote. So we were kind of guessing, did we have enough volume, enough pipeline getting into our servers and our virtual desktops? We know we run virtuals on premise, but was our pipe going to handle all that from outside type of thing? So then we started prioritizing if we had to start throttling back, who were the key roles and people that had to work remote. So we put that plan together. March 16th is when we kicked it into gear as well. We had everyone go home. So we moved, again, about 1,500 people at that time. The factory had shut down the week before that, but we had moved everyone home at that point. Luckily, we really didn't have to put a lot of that plan in place. We had enough bandwidth, we had enough server capacity to do it, and oddly enough, a lot of people are coming back and saying that working our transition to Teams. We were in the middle of transitioning to Teams. It's probably the only thing that we accelerated quite a bit was to actually fully implement Teams and for our collaboration platform. But people are finding meetings are shorter now. They're more efficient in this scenario. So there definitely have been some benefits from it.
Jody, what about your manufacturing facilities? Are those operating and open right now, or how is?
No, so the last 2 weeks we've been planning safer at work now about bringing them back in. So it's all about, we've implemented infrared cameras now. We removed, here in the Madison facility, there's about 30 doors. That's going down to 4 doors, 2 in, 2 out, with the ins having infrared cameras on there. They'll take your temperatures. The manufacturing facility over the last 5-6 weeks have been putting in separators on the assembly lines, removing every common touch point that we can, and that so when we do come back, we'll have done that quite a bit. Everyone will have masks when they're in the facility. So we're going to come back not at full capacity right away on May 11th, but we'll implement safer at work when we do come back. And that also implements the infrared cameras and everything for all employees coming back into any facility now. Mm-hmm. But there's many things. It's 50 some pages long. The run book is kind of safer at work. It's quite extensive.
Okay, great. And we will talk more about that as well a little bit later. Laurie, share with us some of the perspective and learnings from Marquette. So what did you guys have to deal with to adjust to the changing situation?
So our biggest challenge was continuity of academics. We did have true business continuity that it was developed a few years ago, but our lines of business moving the business to online learning was rather seamless. Where I'm getting this echo. Can you hear the echo?
We can.
I don't know if so. Anyways, but academia, this is where we had some gaps. 50% of our faculty had actually taught a class online. 85% of our students had attended a class online, and we had made the decision to move to online rather quickly. It was Thursday, I believe March 11th, and we had made the decision we were going to go to online light come Monday, March 16th. And online light was basically what we called it, so we could take the full week of the 16th to work with the faculty, creating the curriculum in an online format, training folks on how to use the D2L learning management system. And also we had made the choice to go with Teams as our synchronous or live learning platform. So training folks on how to use Teams, how to record, how to upload coursework into D2L. We trained over 1,000 staff members and over 5,000 hours worth of training in a 7-day period of time. It was truly a team effort, but come March 23rd, we were full online and no more online light, and the transition went very well. A few gaps that we didn't think about. Of the 11,500 plus students, we have 18% that are Pell Grant recipients. And what that means is their family income is somewhere around $50,000 or less per year. So with those, and 18% is a pretty high percentage. And with those students, we were concerned about computers at home, as well as network. And the other challenge we had was the faculty's network at home, the quality. So those were things that we hadn't thought of and things that we had to put a remediation plan around. We were able to order computers save some of our computers from our computer replacement program that were only about 3 to 4 years old, redeploy those, pull in computers from our computer labs, and we've loaned out and shipped computers to both students, faculty, and staff. Our D2L learning management system and obviously Teams are both cloud-based. So meeting that need of the students for the online learning and just simply shipping a computer worked. Some of the other challenges that we ran into, experiential learning. So you can't, with co-ops and clinicals and internships, you can't necessarily support that through technology. But the Department of Ed and some of the accreditation organizations for our dental school or nursing or PAs, they were very accommodating in changing some of the rules and needs on a temporary basis for our students. Labs were a challenge, and there are some free online tools that we were able to find in working with some of our peers throughout the country. And those were kind of the things that we had to work out in the first 2 weeks. Policies changed. We tried to get our faculty to really look at, keep it simple, take the KISS principle and getting us through the finish line and ensuring the quality education that our students expect. So we are in our final week of courses, and next week is exams. And we are now starting to think about, we're going, like I said before, we're going full online over the summer, but we're starting to look at, I'll call it safer at school, where how are we ensuring the appropriate separation in our classrooms? What does this mean for our class sizes? Resident life. What are we going to do if some of our students do become ill? During this pandemic, we had about 200 students that did remain in our dorms, whether they were from out of the country. We do have a couple of homeless students and students that don't have the appropriate type of home life. And our mission is cura personalis and taking care of the whole. So we do have quite a few students that we are keeping on campus and supporting.
Okay, thank you, Laurie. So very interesting. So it sounds like, listening to everybody comments, to a certain degree, there's a lot, one of the biggest adjustments that organizations had to make is enabling their workforce to be remote. And it's interesting, the pandemic has ultimately resulted in what is effectively the largest work from home experiment conducted in human history. Even companies that did not have much experience or did not believe in working from home found themselves forced to go remote. So with remote working, there are obviously right now many questions related to productivity of employees working from home. How do they stay engaged? How do we enable them to collaborate better being in a virtual environment? So how do you ensure employees within your organizations are engaged when working remote? How do you encourage that effective collaboration? Some of you referenced Microsoft Teams. Obviously, we're using Microsoft Teams right now as well. So what other technology tools or modes of communication that you're utilizing within your organizations to ensure productivity, engagement, and collaboration of your employees? Jody, let's start with you. Can you take this one first?
Sure. The biggest part that we saw was the using of Teams, encouraging video, setting up specific times just for teams to get on and talk, and having that interaction. what you miss within the office a lot of times is the hallway or the banter between the cubicles or whatever else. So we wanted to encourage to have that same time to get up and see everyone else and be able to just have that talk outside of your meetings. But I think, at least for us, the normal stand-up process that we have of our agile process and everything else in our product teams really supports a great communication channel for the technical people. So in IT, we didn't see it as a big leap to go remote. We always have people working remote anyways. I think the rest of the business who never thought you could go remote, they have seen, or their eyes have been opened up a little bit, especially in our engineering area. They didn't think their engineers could not work with, if they weren't in a room and they had, you know, walls that they could write on and do things. And so there we have found between different tools, but again, just setting up video times, finding things to generate interactions and chats. I know a lot of teams go out there and will post a picture of the day of what your office environment looks like or what you're seeing out your window, just so people start interacting and talk on some of that to keep that engagement going. So it's been more of a low tech using, you know, with the tech we have and just making sure you do create some interaction and trying to keep a regular cadence with your other processes so that those don't fall apart being remote.
Absolutely. Antony, you mentioned that 90+% of your workforce is working remote right now. So what has been your experience? What are some of your learnings? How are you driving that engagement and collaboration?
So similar to what Jody just said, you know, for my IT team, we really didn't miss a beat. A lot of us work remotely on a somewhat regular basis anyway. But what we did do is make sure as this started to stick to all of our, as many as we could, just our regular meetings, right? The regular stand-ups, the regular check-ins. So even though we were in a very unusual situation, but definitely made a point of keeping that regular routine of touch points. Everything was virtual, and you know, using video, definitely encouraging and leading by example in terms of using video. So daily stand-ups, weekly team meetings. And again, similar to what Jody was saying, you know, other parts of the business, it was more of a change because they were much used to having everyone in the office working side by side. We do have a practice in the bank of all of even our operations teams having daily stand-ups. Where previously they would be in the office around their kind of metrics wall or you know, board and looking at the metrics for the day. So it took them a little bit of time to transition some of that to, you know, doing it online and showing them and sharing their metrics online. But they were able to do that and are doing it pretty well now. Then we've also just tried little things, you know, to keep kind of that connection. A lot of our teams do, you know, maybe not every week, but a couple of times now, kind of a virtual happy hour, right? Just pick a day at the end of the day and 4 o'clock, everyone just jumps on a video call and you've got whatever your drink of choice is on hand and just, you know, hang out for a while. But yeah, just trying to do those kind of things. We've going to do our first virtual all-employee town hall in a couple of weeks. So we'll see how that goes.
Okay. Mark, what about Milwaukee Tool? Anything to add to the conversation in terms of driving that collaboration and engagement?
No, I'd say it's all pretty similar. So we had traditionally our legacy platform was Skype. We were in the process of moving to Teams. So we've seen a dramatic increase also in Teams usage as a result of this, because I think everyone likes that better as a true collaboration platform. Probably the biggest change for us is while we had used Skype for years, we pretty much never leveraged video in the past. And now with people being remote, being able to see people has been really important. Also found it's just a really important factor from a morale standpoint. So even we did kind of an all-employee update, and we did it leveraging some Microsoft's technology to stream it just so that they could see our president talking to them and see the CFO talking to them. So it was always surprising to me that we didn't leverage video more in the past, but now that we've truly gone more remote, it's become really important to people to be able to see each other related to that. That's probably been the single biggest thing. The virtual social hours, I thought that was, Anthony already mentioned that. It's been kind of an interesting thing that kind of people developed, on their own. And we've kind of got people split in two ways. I've got a number of people that are saying, well, I'm getting a lot more done at home because I don't have people walking up to me and interrupting me. And then I've got another set of people that are missing all of the just hallway interactions, and they're saying they're getting more meetings because now everything has to be scheduled in order to have the interaction. So that'd be the only thing I would add.
Very true. Laurie, anything to add from your standpoint?
It sounds like we are all doing very similar things. When we first started out, there were a lot of emails flying around between our different groups. And so we had, and there was just too much information, and people were missing important updates. So we created team sites for individual divisions, if you will, so department chairs, deans, and within each of those team sites, we ended up creating channels. And with those channels, the topics may be employees, academics, residence life, things along those lines. So we kept our communication all in one specific area, so you didn't have to farm through so many different emails or long Teams channels or Teams conversations. As you all know, things were fluid and they were changing sometimes hourly on just the current state of stay at home and the current state of business operations. So the team channels and the team sites helped us quite a bit. We also developed change champions within each one of our colleges. So their primary role was to make sure that the communication was being dispersed among the various 11 colleges that we have. That was very helpful. And some creative things that various team members were doing just to keep things lighthearted is they behind the scenes come up with a theme. And it might be exercise, it might be wear a wig. And if the day that it was exercise, as a person came up on the screen, they'd be wearing their bike helmet and their glasses and be like, I just came back from a 10-mile bike ride. And then the next person would get on to speak and they'd be holding their weights going, well, I'm still working out. Third person to be standing there holding his golf club and being like, is this meeting over? I got a tea time. And, it just added a sense of levity and got people to laugh a little bit, which was good for team building.
All right, let's shift gears a little bit and let's look a little bit into the future. So we hear a lot that some of the changes that have been introduced will be difficult to reverse back completely. And I think some of it, I was just having a discussion with someone last week where, the organization really, did not practice remote. And now they're saying, well, at least 25% of our workforce will continue to stay remote. So along those same lines, what technology changes do you anticipate making as a result of the crisis? In other words, what changes are here to stay? So, and what impact will this pandemic have on your IT organization? What it looks like and how it operates after the crisis? So Mark, let's start with you for this one.
Sure. So I guess there's two things that really come to mind, I think, in terms of changes. And I don't think it's necessarily like we weren't doing this before, but I think they're going to be what I consider accelerators. So for me, that's collaboration in general and what I'll call virtual selling and marketing. So from a collaboration standpoint, we had been working on this more from the standpoint of we had global teams. And I think now that everyone's gone remote and had to do all facets of their jobs in different ways, I just think it's going to put tremendous pressure on all the different types of tools and processes we provide from a collaborative standpoint, because I do think there'll be more of it. we have not discussed that as a business as to what that will really look like, and that we've not had that many people necessarily work remote, but I think it's something people are asking about. And I think it's, now that they've had to use all these different things, I think it's going to put a lot more pressure on bringing a true collaboration solution, for lack of a better term, to the masses. And then the second piece of this is the virtual selling and marketing. It's something I would say the sales organization had been looking at, but now that they can't go on job sites, customers won't take visits. It's putting tremendous pressure on how do you show someone, what the new tool is or how you'd use that tool. So it's, whether it's augmented reality or, different types of solutions, how do you, show people how you can use these tools, how you can repair something. All those types of scenarios start to become things that you want to do in a more virtual way. So I think that's going to accelerate it, because I think we had looked at it more from just a segmentation of the customer market and things of that nature. And I just think this is going to put a lot more pressure, and it's not clear how quickly all those different types of things will change. And then underneath the covers, I think it also highlights where diversification of your supply chain can also help. Anywhere where you have a single point of failure, if you will, it's a potential problem depending on what types of issues occur.
Antony, what about HSA banks? So what are changes there to stay?
Yeah, so probably the biggest change is similar to what Mark said around the sales, and then for us the account management. Just as Mark said, customers aren't taking in-person visits from our account management teams anymore, and probably won't for a while. So looking at how we transition all of those to online, video, and then having all of the material available digitally. And then the other thing which we do, if you think about our business, a lot of companies in the past would have a health and wellness fair or a benefits enrollment fair, right? Where it's just during open enrollment, and oftentimes our teams would go out and they would have an information table set up in the cafeteria or something like that. So looking at how we transition all of those to being more video, online digital type interactions. So yeah, that's on the kind of the sales and marketing and account management side. But then also internally, I think there's much more focus now on looking at all of our back office processes and looking for more opportunities to digitize that more and more. And then I would say very tactically, even just with new employee setup, we're making sure right from the start now as a default, everyone gets set up with VPN access, and looking at most likely just going to 100% just laptops. We have a lot of people in the office today that, especially our contact center agents, who are on desktops, which obviously was a challenge with moving folks remotely. So most likely we'll be switching that to just giving everyone a laptop so they have something they can pick up and take home with them if need be. So that's what we're doing.
Okay, thank you. Laurie, what about Marquette? So what changes are there to stay at Marquette? Laurie, you're on mute.
Of course I am.
That's pretty good. We made it quite a while before we made that statement.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Have you played the video bingo that somebody says you're on mute and then bingo? Anyways, so Marquette's line of business, we have a 138-year-old tradition of quality education, and so face-to-face will always be part of our business model. I do see, however, that we may be moving to more hybrid, and I think this pandemic has demonstrated how we can be successful with online education. Students learn differently now. So we might see where 2 classes are in person and 1 might be virtual type of a thing. So that hybrid model might be coming down the pipe. It's not part of our strategy at this time, but with academic freedom, the faculty determine pedagogically how are they going to be teaching. And I think this has created a sense of comfort for many of our faculty members. You know, we are doing a follow-up survey. We led it maybe a week ago, and it is to our faculty and students. We're asking about the type of technology, the quality of education, if it was more difficult, just a myriad of questions. I do think that survey, that postmortem, will help us understand how we can move into summer, into fall, a little bit more successful, and with lessons learned. From a business perspective, much like Antony, looking at our back office, I do think we are going to see more digitization, getting away from so much paper. I think we are a paper-heavy organization, and as we move to more tools, more systems, I'm sure we're going to be looking at document management. And a gap that we have to fill is computers for our first-gen students, and those students that may not have a computer themselves. We do have computer labs throughout campus, but you know, this pandemic very much heightened for me the gaps that we have in that space.
Thank you, Laurie. Jody, over to you. What's there to stay at Sub-Zero?
Well, you know, it's 3 areas that we're concentrating on. Mark kind of brought up the supply chain right now. I think we thought we had a pretty good balance of the supply chain. This heightened a lot of information we didn't know about our complete supply chain and the cascading impact that goes through the whole chain. So it's getting tighter integration into the full supply chain. The factory side, it's really going to be a lot more around automation. You know, of course, we automate now, but now it's just stepping it up even to a new level of having to get some efficiency gains, but as well the safety of the employees and that. And then our sales too. It's been a high touch business. When I came here, I just remember looking at the digital landscape and I'm like, well, we don't support chat. And they're like, oh no, that's not our customer base. They should be talking live to someone in the showroom or the dealer. You know, it was probably March 17th after we enacted March 16th. Don't you think we need chat now? You know, type of thing. So we expect the whole customer relationship to change dramatically. We're already implementing virtual showroom visits and consultations because our showrooms are not considered essential in most of the markets. So it's going to be a long time before they open back up. So how do we adapt to that? So it's really, from an IT standpoint, I don't see our landscape technically changing a lot. It's just going to be attention on probably things that are on our roadmap and really trying to accelerate different aspects of our roadmap, which then becomes the next challenge of how do you make room on other things to make room for that acceleration. So that's really where things are at right now.
Right. Thank you. So let's talk a little bit about the financial impact of the situation. So what is this crisis? How did it impact your organizations from the financial standpoint? How has it shifted your spend? And what types of short or long-term impacts do you anticipate because of this? And Antony, let's start with you on that one.
Sure. So actually in the short term, we have not really seen any impact, right? It hasn't changed anything in terms of our spending plans right now. We're still moving forward with all of the planned projects and the initiatives that we had planned out, laid out our plans last fall when we were working on our long-term plan. So we've moved forward with that, trying to keep as many of those things moving forward as normal. Longer term, obviously, we continue to look at financial impacts to the whole industry and the economy, and reassess our plans periodically. But I mean, that's something that we do every year, right? There's always something that comes along that wasn't in our plan. But yeah, short term, we haven't really seen any impact to our plans.
Okay. Jody, what about you at Sub-Zero?
Well, we definitely, as soon as we knew we were going to be halting production, we anticipated some changes. So we've had to go in and delay projects. I don't see anything being canceled at all. It's all really a delay, and protecting our cash position right now. And now, as we've gotten through and stabilized, and we probably, what we're doing now is starting to come up with the multiple versions of what the new normal is going to look like. Because I don't think that there is the old normal anymore. There's only the new normal. We've got to figure out how to start taking those delays now and repurposing that. So we know already we're on the virtual showroom and a lot of things on the digital landscape doing there, but it's going to be now assessing the other ones. And then as we'll have to pull the appropriate levers and triggers as we move in the coming months, as we see how, is there a second wave coming, how, in this fall or something like that. And again, what do we have to do? But it's, I guess that my role, I always figure I'm probably more financial than I am technology anymore. And so it's just doing good financial management.
Okay. Laurie, what about you? You were on mute as well?
I unmuted myself this time. So for Marquette, we did this past semester, we reimbursed students' families 50% of the room and board. So there was a pretty significant financial impact at the fourth quarter of our fiscal year. But we were able to overcome those dollars. We are currently modeling for the fall semester a 5, a 10, a 15, and a 20% reduction in admissions. As I said earlier, families, students, they're unsure of everything that's going on, what's going to happen in the fall. Do they take a gap semester, a gap year? And we are seeing that currently with our deposits. Many of our students in the surveys that we've received back, the surveys that I had just mentioned, many of our students had stated that they are waiting to see if Marquette is going to have face-to-face courses next year, and then they're going to be making a decision about if they're coming back to Marquette, if maybe they're staying close to home, waiting out the COVID and waiting out to see what's going to happen in fall. So this does have a fiscal impact on the university. And, so we are currently having conversations on what does our business model look like? What are the short-term impacts if we have the 5%, 10, 15, and 20% reduction? Obviously, a 20% reduction is quite significant, and it really changes our landscape. But we have a strong brand and a strong presence in the academia world. So I think we'll come out of this okay, but we're going to be cautious as we move forward. From a technology spend, we are continuing to invest in distance learning. We are continuing to invest in cloud technology, things along those lines that are going to not only just set us up for the fall, but for the future as well.
Thank you. And Mark, what about financial impacts on Milwaukee Tool? So what are you guys experiencing from the financial impact?
Yeah, so I think our story is very similar to what Jody talked about. It's more of you're seeing more things that I'll call it pausing or delaying in terms of some of the investments that we're making. The focus really is on, what are those things that we need to do to keep the business running, to keep serving customers and end users. as well as what are those activities that we think are going to drive future growth. So those have been the two primary focuses for the types of things that we want to keep doing. It's been very similar. I think the hardest part about all this is the uncertainty of what recovery is going to look like and when it's going to occur. So we've not made like a bunch of dramatic decisions like go cancel everything. At the same time, it's been more of how do you make some decisions now to buy ourselves some time to see how things start to emerge. And then we've got the flexibility to start to turn the faucet back on, and you can decide, how hard you want to turn that faucet on based on the data that you are seeing.
Thank you. So I have the last question for the panelists, which going to look at preparing and getting ready for going back. So I know, Jody, at the beginning of the panel, you alluded to the fact that you're making some changes with, changing the number of doors, infrared lighting, whatever it might be. So I would like to kind of go around the room with a panel and to see what are your companies doing now to prepare to go back. So what changes, what adjustments are you making to how you do business tactically and strategically to prepare for going back? And Jody, let's start with you on that one.
Well, definitely, I mentioned the tactical side. We're in motion already, so the workplace is going to change. I even said, I was joking with a group of people yesterday, some people may not want to come back into the office anytime soon. You can't use a microwave, plastic up between everyone type of thing. But strategically, it's really starting to think again about what our facilities going to be. How's expansion of facilities? I'm hearing similar numbers from many companies that they don't expect maybe 25% of the people to come back. So all of a sudden, what does that mean to our construction plans and everything else going on? Again, the distribution, we have a couple thousand dealers in North America alone, and service companies and install companies that we have to try to figure out how to keep them afloat during this. So it's looking at our whole ecosystem and trying to figure out all of those things that we have to do to make sure that once we do sell the product, it can get installed and serviced and so forth, and taking that all into account and how we're going to work with it. So there's probably no one thing. It's employee safety first, protection of the company, revenue and the customers, to make sure we're around to support the product. That's what you're concentrating on. And the decision making, even though we have a good roadmap, as Mark said before, the unknown is making our time window, I think, much shorter to make decisions, and unfortunately being more of a reactive mode in the near future to see until we figure out if this is I guess the economists call it a V recovery or a U recovery type of thing, but it's trying to figure that out and just being prepared and having all the information and good communication between the business partners. I know I spend a lot more time, definitely on calls, constantly talking to everyone from our head of sales to a head of operations, just making sure we're all on the same page and making decisions and wise ones and being aligned on that.
Okay, thank you. Laurie, at Marquette, so what are you guys doing to prepare to go back?
So we have a little bit of time. We have a long runway until we bring our students back. So we're in the process of developing that plan. We have a recovery team that is put together, and first and foremost, safety of the students and our staff is paramount. Also is flexibility, because things are changing quickly. Communication, enablement of our mission. Those are kind of the foundational pieces of our recovery plan at this point. We have an academics team, employee team, facilities team, a medical team that are all building this return to campus program. From an IT perspective, my team will be back on work, back on campus, and back to work hands-on. I'm anticipating May 11th or May 18th, and then it'll be a limited staff because we have to get ready for the fall semester to open. So working with our medical team and our legal on what those return to work practices will be. Of course, social distancing, possibly masks, keeping folks at the desks and the cubes, ensuring that people feel comfortable in their space. Those that we share offices, we would split up, things along those lines. But we're still working out those process and procedures as we speak.
Okay, thank you. Mark, Milwaukee Tool, what are you guys preparing for to go back?
Yeah, so I think when we talk about preparing to go back, we're largely focused today on, that'd be more focused on what I'll call the office jobs, right, if you will, because the operations have generally kept running and they've been putting different procedures in place over time to support that. So as you think about the office, the first thing is we're trying to identify what are jobs or tasks that people really can't do remotely. And those would be prioritized as the first things that we would bring back. So think of maybe someone working in a lab where you just need to physically touch and use certain types of equipment. Those would be examples of roles or jobs that we would bring back first. And then there's a litany of procedures they could put into place for how do you make sure there's enough distancing, if there needs to be any kind of collaboration with somebody else, how does that happen? Those types of things. And then beyond that, we are kind of doing an inventory then across the teams to figure out who would we start to bring back? Because in some cases we have individuals who they don't have to be in the office to do their work, but they would prefer to be in the office versus at home, or they feel like they'd be more productive. Likewise, we have other people that, just with childcare or whatever, they may not be able to physically come into the office. So we're trying to get people classified as to who needs to come into the office, who would prefer to come into the office, who can't come into the office. It could be a childcare issue, it could be a health issue, those types of things. And then once we kind of understand what that's looking like, that will then feed into how we're going to, if you will, set them up in the office and put the right procedures in place to keep everybody safe. So that's kind of where we are at in terms of kind of planning for a return. Okay,
thank you. Antony, over to you. Closing words on HSA.
Yeah, so like I think everyone else mentioned, right, the safety of our employees is paramount. So that's really what we're using to guide our decisions. We had an interesting discussion recently amongst our leadership team because we kind of went around the call and had everyone kind of answer the question, right? Do you have any pressing needs within your team for people to be back in the office? And all around the table, everyone came back and said no, right? We are operating 100% remote or almost 100% remote right now. And so no one had a pressing need to say, yep, there's something that we absolutely cannot do remotely. So for us, I think that's been a benefit that there's no rush for us to get everyone back in the office. So we're talking about, how do we stage that in as similar considerations like Mark was talking about. Some people, whether it's because of family situation or elsewhere, may not be able to. Some people have a preference that they may want to. So trying to take all of that into consideration, and obviously look at guidelines from the CDC and health authorities. But then also talking about, as we bring people back in the office, how do we make sure there's social distancing? How do we stagger it so that we can allow time for more enhanced cleaning in the office? Talking about maybe previously on the weekends, people could go in the office whenever they wanted. So maybe we just say, all right, on the weekends, nobody's allowed in the office so that we can do, kind of more of a deep cleaning schedule during the office. So just looking at all those options. But right now, there's nothing that's driving us to say we have to be back in the office as soon as we can. So taking it slow.
Okay. Good. Thank you very much to the panelists. What I would like to do next is open it up to the audience and see if we have any questions. So if you have a question, so you can ask it verbally, so please unmute yourself and you can ask a question. Please state your name, the organization you're with, and you can ask the question of everybody on the panel or anybody specific on the panel, or you also have an option to ask questions via chat. So let's see if we have any verbal questions that people want to ask. And then Jill, if you can queue up the questions that we might have via chat. So we'll go to those next.
Hey, good afternoon. This is Thayer Faust. I'm with Eversana. I director of the IT PMO and enterprise apps. Good discussion. I think we're seeing similar themes with where we work. The question I want to ask is, you know, hindsight's always 20/20. And if we could look back and say, knowing what we know now, what things might we have done differently before this hit, that you would have approached your positions, your work, how things are getting done? What would you have done differently?
Thank you, Thayer.
Mm-hmm.
Anybody to volunteer to answer this one? And then everybody else can jump in.
Oh, I guess I can try to start. You know, the thing I thought about, you know, the very first question I think we started with was the kind of what was the state of your business continuity plan? And I would have said in the past, with places I've been, you know, previously, we always tried to like create the ultimate plan and have everything thought through. And as I thought about what happened here, I'm not sure, as much effort as we might have put into some of those things in the past, I'm not sure we would have been that much better off, if you will. So I think the game plan of pulling a team together, dealing with the situation kind of in somewhat real time, and putting that plan together actually worked really well. And it's proven to be pretty effective. And as I thought about it, I don't know how you could ever have anticipated all the different changes and just the different directions depending on where you lived and how it just all evolved. So I don't know, it's kind of an aha for me. I always thought in the past you're supposed to have it all written down and you can just kind of go. And you know, I think if you would have really had such a plan, the amount of time and effort you would have had to do would have been probably unfathomable. And I don't even know that it would be even been possible.
Right. Nothing about a crisis to launch it.
Yeah, Mark, I guess I'd go on with that. I think rather than trying to plan out all the detail, one of the things that's become obvious is you really need a set of guiding principles that are going to drive you and make these decisions, because every case is going to be unique and you can't come up with every scenario. Secondly, I think the one thing that as we've just started now having, in a sense, retrospects, trying to figure out, okay, what would we have done differently, or what could we do better if this happens again next time? And communication has really become the one that we realize that we, at least our organization, counted on the communication to be so organic, or almost people telling people, holding department meetings in person, or going over and talking to their managers. And we really need to come up and, you know, start embracing more of this technology approach. You know, if it's streaming videos from the executive team and more regular communication, and finding a way to do that, and having better channels to, you know, communicate these changes. So there's definitely, I think, some the communication is probably the biggest gap that we've identified that we've really got to fix on how we're going to handle this and execute some of those decisions that are being done by the guiding principles.
Yeah, I would agree with all of that, right? I don't think you can ever think of all the possible scenarios and things that could happen. And definitely I agree with the point of having, you know, guiding principles to guide the decisions that you're making on the fly. One thing that, you know, we're working on now, I think, is also a realization for us is going through with not just individually with each function, but collectively talking about what functions we perform that are truly critical for the overall operations. You know, in our past, our DR, our VCP plans, each kind of function went through, and we prioritized what were the key activities. I did that for IT. But this time kind of made us realize that all of the dependencies between the functions, that we got together as a leadership team to say, okay, what's really critical to keep the bank running? And collectively kind of walk that through to understand, all right, so if things were to get worse and we had more people that, or people that got infected and are unable to work, what's that priority of that ordered list of things? Well, these things are absolutely essential. If we can't perform these, then we're not a bank anymore. And which things can we stop doing, or we can say, well, we don't have to do that every day. We only need to do that once a week. Push comes to shove. So lesson learned. I think that was probably one of the items for us.
Okay, thank you.
I pretty much agree with everything that everyone has said. Especially, Mark, you're right. You cannot plan for every detail, but that's, as the technology leader for the university, it's that much more important that we build a foundation that allows that flexibility, work anywhere, work anytime, and in a secure manner, so that we can meet the need. As the need continues to change very frequently, we live in a very fast, agile world, and just having that technology footprint and the staff that can support that is important.
All right, thank you, Laurie. Thank you to the panel. Any other questions from the audience? Verbal questions? Unmute yourself if you have a question. In the meantime, I have a couple of questions that came through via chat. So the first one comes from Chris Downs. How has COVID-19 impacted your key 2020 initiatives? Are they paused, canceled, or still in progress?
I would have to say, I'll jump in here. I would have to say yes. Some are paused, some are canceled, and some are still in progress. Yes, and looking at our footprint and our economic condition, and as I said, for Marquette University, we are modeling a 10%, 15% reduction in students. So that has an impact on smart classroom technology, and it has an impact on quantities and whatnot. So some of our projects, we are looking at them carefully, and how they will help us deliver quality education. We did put many of our projects, non-emergency projects, where people were required to be boots on the ground on campus. We did put a pause on those. Others that were critical, we continued. But we were kind of all over the gamut on that particular question.
I'd go with yes. That's a good answer.
So there's certain logic that went into evaluating which ones to cancel, which ones to keep, which ones to postpone. So what was the thought process around shifting priorities?
Well, I think it went to our discussion before. As a business, you have to identify what you're doing for safety of employees, but then also to keep the business running. And so if that's focused on customers, you would find that the funding for those customer initiatives are going to stay funded likely. If you're doing something to maybe increase capacity or update something in your data center, for what you have left on-prem, you might hold that or delay that to keep that money available for those other ones. From our initiatives, if it was a strategic enabler for our roadmap, those have primarily stayed in our budget, and we've really taken the more tactical or capacity growth or update and held that. I mean, it's a very general statement, but that's kind of the decision-making process.
Okay, thank you. The other question comes from Chris Hippenstill. So with IoT and users working from home and having access to internal networks, have you implemented any additional security to battle possible cyber attacks?
So I can jump in there and get started. So being a bank, we were and have been pretty locked down from a security perspective. So we haven't had to implement any additional security measures, though our security teams are seeing a pretty dramatic increase in the number of attacks that are hitting our environment. What we have done from a user perspective is just send out more frequent reminders just about typical security hygiene, right? Reminding people, don't click on that link, or open that email if you're not sure about who it came from or what the contents is. So doing more of that, because that's always been probably our weakest link in our security, right? Is the social engineering, is the user clicking on some link accidentally. So but in terms of additional security protocols, security measures, we haven't had to do anything new specifically in response to this.
Okay.
And I would support that. I don't think we've done anything new. We've always had remote users. We're just doing a larger volume. So our same practices that we were doing before for a smaller number, we're continuing to do those. We're maybe a little unique in the sense that we do have hundreds of thousands of appliances out there that are our own IoT devices that people continue to try to hack in and get into our network that way anyway. So we're always defending that type of traffic. From one perspective of our corporate network, introducing so many new endpoints definitely has a concern, and security teams are paying more attention to that. But so far, I don't know if I have real wood, knock on wood, we haven't seen anything. We've had one case where we saw some phishing, but we've stepped up our phishing exercises ourselves to keep everyone diligent about it and just doing those things.
Okay, good. Mark, Laurie, have anything to add?
No, we have not added anything extra. As a result, phishing, we've seen, like the others have said, huge increases in that kind of across the board. But most of the protections and things that we have in place seem to be working, and we're just trying to be more diligent in monitoring what is going on related to that.
Okay.
Exact same for Marquette, and it was mostly about education. And we had created on our website resource pages for faculty, staff, and students. And we would hit home pretty hard on various cyber hygiene training. Zoom bombing was a big thing in education right now. Tips and tricks to prevent that type of activity happening with teams, and some of our faculty members were using Zooms, so how to prevent that with the Zoom as well. So yeah, it was about communication and education.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions from the audience? Do we have more questions? If you would like to ask a question, if you can please unmute yourself and introduce and ask a question. Jill, do we have any questions via chat? Any additional ones that I did not see?
No, just the two that you read.
Okay. All right, unless there are any more questions, so this concludes our panel for this afternoon. So again, I would like to extend tremendous thanks to the individuals who took the time to be on the panel and share their thoughts and perspectives. So tremendous thank you to all of you. All of this, as you know, those of you who are familiar with New Resources Consulting are aware that we conduct these executive briefings on a regular basis, usually quarterly. So we do not have the next one defined yet, but stay tuned. So there will be one coming, and the dates and the topics will be posted on our website. So all of that fits into the umbrella of NRC's value add of educating and connecting. So our value add to the business community is that we help educate the community on hot technology topics. And this is the reason why we're doing things like that, where we bring some of the thought leaders in the community together to really share their thoughts, perspectives, best practices. So we connect organizations to organizations, professionals to professionals, we connect clients to candidates, candidates to clients, and we really do it within the umbrella of this whole concept of helping educate and connect individuals and organizations. So stay tuned for more executive briefings in the future. We will be producing a summary of the discussion today. So those of you who did have an opportunity to attend and listen to the comments, we thank you tremendously for being here with us. If you have people on your teams that did not get a chance to attend, but you would like to share some of the thoughts and perspectives from our panelists, you will have a summary document that you will be able to utilize to do that. So with that, let me see if, are there any closing comments from the panelists before we? All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Anastasia.
Thank
All
you.
right. Thank you very much, and have a great afternoon, everyone.
Thank you.
You too, all.
Everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.